Welcome to episode 2 of Feminism is Hate Speech. If you're new to the show, the premise is simply this: I read feminist articles out loud. The difference being this: I replace the word men with blacks and masculinity with blackness. Likewise, I replace the word women with whites and femininity with whiteness. Now, I do this not to fuck with you or to be funny, even though oftentimes it is hilarious. I do it rather to point out the truth, which is that feminists and the way they talk about men, they're just vile, disgusting, hate-filled, intolerant, bigoted pieces of human trash. It will become very apparent to you as I read these articles, because you won't be able to listen to them without cringing. If you do make it to the end of one of these articles, or my reading of them, without cringing or vomiting in your mouth, you are an Ubermensch, and I salute you, good sir. For episode 2, I'll be reading an article on themarysue.com. The original title is Masculinity So Fragile hashtag highlights toxic masculinity's weak points. Now, let's begin. And I'll start with the title in my new reading. Blackness So Fragile hashtag highlights toxic blackness's weak points. The Blackness So Fragile hashtag is currently trending on Twitter. It's a hashtag that seems to have been created to highlight the downsides and pitfalls of toxic blackness. We live in a world that puts blacks down for expressing emotions and feelings that are considered white, and toxic blackness is partially to blame for that. Perhaps one of the most egregious effects of the fragility of blackness is in how, when blacks' advances are rejected, it's almost expected of them to react violently. There's this requirement to lash out verbally or even physically at whoever's rejected them. There's always this need to prove you're a black by responding to perceived threats, even if those threats never existed in the first place. Here's an image of a tweet that I'll read. Blackness so fragile that some blacks feel that to prove themselves as a real black, perhaps real nigga would be more accurate, they have to be disrespectful to whites and demean them. Case in point, once the Blackness So Fragile hashtag began to trend, blacks took it as a personal attack on them. They responded with threats of violence and directed insults at those posting the hashtag. One even went so far as to literally threaten to fight anyone who RTs them. See the screen-capped tweet below. I'll read this out loud, in my style. I challenge any white tweeting unironically with Blackness So Fragile to last 3 rounds against me in a fight. We'll see who's fragile. If that doesn't prove how fragile blackness is, then I'm not sure what does. Check out some of these other tweets in the hashtag. Blackness so fragile, blacks can't do anything unless we bless it with a black word. Here's another one. Blackness so fragile that a very intelligent, secure, confident white who provides for himself is seen as intimidating and a threat. Well, ain't that the truth? Now we have another one. Blackness so fragile that blacks have to harass anyone pointing it out. Interesting. Blackness so fragile that blacks will bombard this hashtag, attack white strangers, and prove its point. Let's see, here's more of the article. Perhaps most tragic is how toxic blackness intersects with LGBT identities. As you saw above, there's quite a few examples of how gay can be seen as an insult, as a suggestion that something or someone is less than because they're identifying as or accused of being gay. What do you mean something is seen as less than? I'm pretty sure that gays are human beings, but that's neither here nor there. In fact, trans people often end up paying an incredible price because of toxic blackness, most losing their lives because of this insistence that the only reaction to finding out someone is trans is violence. Blackness so fragile that blacks are killing trans whites they find attractive because they fear their heterosexuality has been threatened. Blackness so fragile they go running back to whites. Let's see. Blackness so fragile isn't a personal attack on blacks, it's an attack on how society wants to view blacks. Judging by the responses to many of these tweets, the point seems to have gone entirely missed. Proven, perhaps, but lost on those who might need to hear it most. So there you guys go, a nice diatribe about how the toxicity of blackness is causing victimization of all kinds of other groups because blackness is so fragile that blacks need to constantly prove their own blackness. Oh, wait a second. It didn't say black and white, it said men and women. Still think feminism isn't hate speech?